This special meeting of the Judson Board of Trustees is hereby called to order at 5 p.m. Thank you for taking time to join us this evening. In compliance with State Government Code on open meetings, tonight's agenda has been appropriately posted. We have established a quorum, and I will call roll call. I think we can actually use our devices, it looks like, behind us, too. Here we go. Thank you. Okay, and for the record, we have a full board with the exception of Ms. Deborah Eaton. She is not here. She is absent. Now that we've established a quorum, we do have one public comment. Public comment is limited to just 3 minutes. We had one speaker sign up to speak regarding the mental health chaplains. Susan Corral.
Hi. I was here last week or the week before when y'all were talking about chaplains. I was a little disheartened. Sorry. It's a little emotional because as a mental health mother, you don't know what's going on. And we're given an opportunity to have another helping hand come into this school and help these kids or be around or available for them to talk to. It doesn't mean that they have to provide counseling. Chaplains, when they're defined by the law, was not exclusive to just Christianity or Catholics or Baptists. It's all inclusive. And you have control of what these people do and the type of requirements of these people. But we are failing our kids. We're failing them miserably.
You have 1 minute.
Our constituents don't even know this is up to vote. But Texas is the worst state for providing this. If a student can't go to a counselor, at least let them go to somebody else. I don't care if it's a Baptist or Mormon or someone, let them go to someone else. I had a friend that son wanted to commit suicide. He tried, it was unsuccessful. And this was just in Cibolo and Steele High School. So there is a rise, there's an epidemic. And you guys are responsible for getting help to these students. Their parents can't do it all because they're unaware. If you read up on mental health, you would know this. And I'm just saying, don't close your minds to allowing chaplains in. Chaplains can be anyone of any faith, and they can be helpful. They can be there for kids who cannot talk or talk to themselves. My son wouldn't talk to a counselor.
Ms. Corral, you've made your time.
Okay, thanks.
I appreciate your comment. Thank you. I'd like to move one of the items regarding the action item we have today before we hear from Dr. Gibson. So discussion and possible action regarding the approval of the ranking for request for competitive sealed proposal for the 23-14 elementary school number 21. Dr. Fields?
Yes, sir. This is simply our request to get started with the construction portion of elementary school 21. We put out a bid. There were 2 respondents. You can see in your board book what those respondents, who those respondents were. It was posted correctly, and we narrowed it down to the top recommendation. We sat and went through our contract with that top recommendation, came to a resolution as how to move forward. On the 3rd page, you can see some of the alternative bids that we have out here. We believe this is under what we budgeted for the actual project. It would begin around March, and we are still on time to open in fall of 2025. So this evening, we're just asking that the board go ahead and approve, please, the construction recommendation for the new elementary school 21.
Are there any questions?
I have just one.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Ryan?
Here you go, Ms. Ryan. You can give that to the seat.
I just had a question about the choice not to use the foam insulation. Is that because the design doesn't necessarily need it because we built it kind of efficiently, or was it just cost prohibitive
Thank you.
to do that? Because hopefully the school will be standing for 60, 70 years of, energy efficiency savings, and we know how much foam insulation brings down energy costs.
Yes, so the reason we had that alternate is because the project was bidding at the same time it was going through the permitting process. And the city of San Antonio has an amendment to their code that allows you not to put that foam in there. In the drawings, we had the foam in there, so it will be in the project. And when we're going through the permit process, we asked the city of Selma, do you have the same code amendment? And they said no. So the alternate allows the foam in the project. It is in the project. The project will have that increased energy efficiency, and we didn't select it because the city of Selma requires it. So you're going to get it, and it is required.
We didn't have to pay for it extra.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so it's in the base bid, that's why.
Yeah,
we
it would have
didn't
been a
need it.
deduct
Perfect.
if it hadn't been selected.
Okay, yes, no, with energy bills going up, anything that can help us with that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do I have any other questions? No? I'll go ahead and make a motion then that we approve the ranking for the request for competitive sealed proposal, RFCSP 23-14, elementary school number 21.
Second.
Okay, we can proceed to vote. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're good. Thank you guys so much.
All right, so now for the main event, and main event is to reintroduce Dr. Gibson to us. Thank you for returning and getting us started on our next level of discussion. So I'd like to yield the floor to you, and go ahead and you can start with our agenda today.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to make sure they mic me up. I don't think I was doing a good job the last time I was here, staying close. Everybody hear me okay? You put it on the zipper. I can take it down a little bit. I can bring it up a little bit. We're good. Okay, all right. Today, the last 2 days, I've been in Robstown, London, Calallen, Somerset, Natalia, and I saved the best for last. I'm in Judson tonight.
You're starting off well.
Yeah. And I'm on the 5:30 a.m. flight back to DFW from San Antonio tomorrow morning. So I will rent a hotel here in a little bit for about 3 hours. I was thinking it would have been simpler just to sleep in the car, just go to the rental car, just park and sleep a little bit. But I am happy to be here, and there's a very serious and structured process that we're about to undergo, and but there's also nuance to it, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to recommend what I think you ought to think about. And so when this process is concluded, it will be Judson ISD's plan, 100%. There have very few non-negotiables, and probably one of them is that when we finish, the tactical team and the strategic team, and we're going to delve into that a little bit more in just a second. Thank you, ma'am. Look at this process, and they can clearly, Betty, the pages didn't line up. Betty and I were trying to think ahead, and it's all good. Everything's good. The only prerequisite is that in 60 to 75 days, when we look at the plan on a page or the scorecard, I'm going to just use those interchangeably, everyone here should feel like they've had their chance for their voice to show up in it, and everyone here should feel like it's our plan, and like that's really it, Mr. President. Like we look at it and there is complete agreement that this is our plan. And there are a lot of smart people around this room. Some are elected officials, some are school, tacticians. And at the intersection of all of these great minds is a great plan. My job is just to extract it out and get it on paper and get us all to agree to it. So a few weeks ago, I was sitting over there where Kristen's sitting, and maybe months ago, when we started talking about this process, and I mentioned it, and I want to bring these back up tonight. And by the way, this is not PowerPoint. This is a conversation. All right, fair enough. And like I want us to feel like we're starting the process with just a dialogue and a conversation. And there's some structure here, and I've got an agenda that I might or might not follow. But I actually have two. They emailed me one, and they made me say it out in the parking lot a while ago. But a couple of other caveats to what we're doing. This is not an effort to expand focus. This is an effort to narrow focus. All right, so like big point number one. On any given day, school district, we're doing 1,000 things, going 1,000 miles an hour. And that's just the nature of the beast. What I hope for us is that when we finish, at the end of the day, we can look down and anchor back to 12, 14 key strategic objectives that the board has adopted, that the tactical team are fully supportive of. And I would tell you, as a superintendent, some days, I would sit down and just like, did I get one thing done today? I know I was here, and I know I was here 18 hours, but if you asked me to write down what I got accomplished, I don't know that I could. And I would find myself, Dr. Fields, grabbing the district scorecard and trying to anchor myself back to the work. And it had that effect on me. And then I hope that it has that effect on everyone. But I want to be real clear that we're trying to narrow focus, not expand focus. And I think coming out of the pandemic, we got started in the world's biggest whack-a-mole game, in the history of the world, and now we're just kind of in that mode of it pops up and we're just swinging at it. And tonight, I hope we start the process of narrowing that down. The second big piece to this, big component, and with the board's background with Lone Star governance and all of that helps, by the way. That's all extremely helpful. Some of the language is going to be a little bit different, but the concepts are the same. And I'll tell you right off the bat, probably one of the primary differences is the targets that you all have already established through LSG are probably really good. We'll probe that a little bit. But we're going to ask you to also think about your staff and your community and your financial perspectives. So you've been working on the student part of it, and so we probably are starting this with some clarity around that. But we need to set targets on and this is called a balanced scorecard. And it's funny, Mr. Macias has already done what I was going to ask everybody to do. Reach in there and just pop out the second page and just lay it up here. I saw you do it a while ago, and I thought, perfect. Because this is where we're heading, and I think this is the right thing to have in front of us. Every conversation tonight should be kind of coming back to this document. And I've got a question to ask you right off the bat here in a little bit to just kind of get the conversation started. But in addition to student outcomes, we're going to talk about staff outcomes, and we're going to talk about community outcomes and financial outcomes. Is that fair enough? And we're going to run them all through the same process. They're all going to go through the same process. Let me just kick off with this. The board in statute, the Board of Trustees, statutory requirement. There's 5 or 6 of them: hire and fire the superintendent, establish the annual budget, and then right in the midst of that, there's this statement about the oversight of management. Okay. There's the oversight of management. So the board is required by law to oversee management. So that means it's clearly not management, it's the oversight of management. And oftentimes when we start thinking about the oversight of management, lines start getting blurred. And you ask one board, what does that mean to you? And for them, it's just, well, we have board meetings. Like that's the oversight. And there's probably some truth to that. Others are, they want to get what, not my term necessarily, but the term you're probably used to. They want to get in the weeds. They want to get in the actions and they want to know about. So we want to agree to this cadence between the strategic team and the tactical team on what's the right level of oversight. Like that's part of this discussion. I'll tell you right now, right off the bat, do you mind passing those around? I mean, you can just send them around if you want to.
Hold on real quick, Dr.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes, just for the record, Deborah Eaton joined at 5:15 p.m.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Gibson.
Thank you, sir. And I'm going to mark out one trustee absent because I am physically present. Very
Physically.
Yes. So if you want to think about it this way, and there's a model coming around that we looked at the first time I was here, the strategic role versus the tactical role versus the operational role. If we're successful, the Board of Trustees adopts the belief, the mission, and the vision, and we'll probe whether your existing one is fine. I'm okay. We do not have to start that process over again. We can talk about that in a little bit, or we can start that, we can do a clean slate and go probe the community. I'm happy to facilitate that. We'll have that conversation. So the board adopts the beliefs, mission, and values, if you want to look at it that way, belief, mission, and vision. They adopt the priorities, and they adopt column 2, the strategic objectives. The board does not adopt the key strategic actions or the progress measures. The board in a year, President Macias, should consider the adoption of the outcome measures in a year. Like we've got to build this thing from left to right. But the board will never adopt the actions and the progress measures. Okay, so then if I'm a board member and I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, okay, if we don't adopt those, then how are we serving our community for the oversight of management? At the end of this introductory phase, before we launch into the long term, I want us to have a good, robust conversation about a cadence of accountability, for lack of a better term, where 1 month we're looking at priority 1, the next month we're looking at priority 2, the next month we're looking at priority 3, the next month we're looking at priority 4. And we're hearing, so I'm gonna pick on Kristen because I know her. So like you're the priority 1, like you're the yellow part, right? And is anyone else here part of the yellow? I just happen to know Kristen is. Okay, so Mary and Kristen, if we're doing that report, let's say in September, you guys are up. And you're going through, these are our key strategic actions, and these are the agreed upon metrics that we cannot look at every single measure, or we will never move the ball down the field. I have a good friend that's a mechanic, and when I take my truck in, he's like, get out. And he plugs it into the computer, and he has his iPad on Bluetooth, and he's over there, and he's like, cool, come look at this, Greg. And I'm like, no, I don't want to see 57 screens of analytics. I don't know what my left rear caliper heat index, I don't care what temperature it is. What's keeping it from running? Why is the check engine light on? Mainly, what's it going to cost, to get that. But actually, I'm a little more curious. I kind of want to know what caused it. Like why did that light come on? So I want to know like 5 things. And he wants to show me 500 data points. Okay, so this column 4, the progress measure, is an agreement here with what are the right things out of the 5,000 data points that point to we're making progress or not. And I can't stress this enough. If there's not clarity between the tactical team and the strategic team on what those measures are that we should be paying attention to, then we get down so far in the weeds, like we're looking at the computer screen and we don't even know why the engine light's on. And does that make sense to everybody? Like, so we're, and Kristen, is it Mary? Is that right? How many data points can y'all look at any given moment? Right? Thousands, yes. Right? They can literally look at thousands. And in the absence of the clarity of what you all think are the top 3 or 4 or 5, we don't know. I mean, as superintendent, I didn't know. Like, y'all got to tell me what, I need to know direction. Are we headed in the right direction? Are we headed in the right direction? And we can always peel, the onion back a layer or two more if we're really trying to dig into something. So the cadence of accountability is because we've reached agreement on what the directional indicators are. Is that fair enough? So far, we're narrowing focus. We want to do 10 things 100% rather than 100 things 10%. Fair enough? Then we want clarity about those 10 things, and it'll be a couple more than 10, but we want to have clarity about those 10 things. Like, what are the 3 most important data sets we need to look at to see if that's moving in the right direction? Okay, like that. And then now we can get in a cadence, that we're not feeling like, just overwhelmed. And now board members are feeling like, what? I'm satisfying clearly what the education code says, oversight of management. Little side note, I did what y'all did, curriculum. That was my background, preparing to crystallize for the board made our team smarter. Fair enough? Because what do we do when the board's not around? We're looking at all 8,000 data points. And I would find myself as a curriculum director saying, okay, you've sufficiently numbed me out. Now tell me, is this good or is this bad? I mean, like, where are we on? So that crystallization, which is probably every tactical team leader here is about to get into, what's the most important thing? How do we know our progress along the way, and how do we know our progress at the end? So if you want, we're going to start with the magic sauce here right off the bat. And I want to ask y'all a question, but the 4 priorities, and I'm going to offer 5. I want to ask y'all a question and start a dialogue. Okay, right off the bat. Then we have the key strategic objectives that are the board adopted. Column 3, the key strategic actions. In light of this document, the strategic team is the board, and the cabinet, I think that's the term you all use, right? Cabinet. Your cabinet is the leadership of your tactical team, basically, right? But your full tactical team would be your campus principals and everyone else brought in. So I had a district last night that said they were going to rename column 3 key tactical actions. They asked me if I thought that was a good idea, and of course, I made this document. I was like, no, it's not. I mean, that's what popped in my mind. And I was like, wait a minute, that is a really good idea, because it's this clarity that that's the tactics. And if you want to think about it this way and write all over this, so the column 2 is what we are doing. Column 3 is how we're going to do it. Does that make sense? So what we are doing, board adopted, what we are doing. Column 3, tactical team, the tactical actions lining up to it. Then progress measures are formative measures or short cycle measures. I'm trying to think of every term. Formative, short cycle. Column 5, long-term measures or outcomes are summative. All right, is that fair enough? And so what the magic sauce here, and by the way, I'll just tell you that this is a manufacturing premise. An action is an input. So column 3 is an input. We're doing something. Then we're checking on the output. Like, is us turning the tools here having the desired benefit short term? And then did all that turning of the tools in the short term net a long-term movement of the big number we're trying to move? Input, output, outcome. Input, output, outcome. Trustees, with your LSG training, you'll probably recognize in parentheses up there, X to Y by Z. The formula of we're trying to move the big number from something to another number, and this is 2027. This could be 24, 25, 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28, if you wanted it to be a 4-year plan. So it would be from 2024 to 2028. That's just another pending question for the next few weeks. So let me, see, I'm already off topic, but I think this was really compelling last night, and this board and this tactical team doing the same thing. It challenged me on 2 or 3 things, two things, and I already told you one. The second one, and right off the bat, they wanted to bifurcate priority 1 into a student academic success bucket and then a student experience bucket. And I just thought that was, so now I'm got to go back to a team to get it vetted and everything. But so priority 1 would be student academic, priority 2 would be student experience, like the total student experience. That might not be the right term, but I see heads nodding. Does that, so extracurricular, co-curricular, health, safety, well-being, involvement. And when you add that, it gives you more room for that priority to breathe on the page. If not, we'll make it one of the strategic objectives under number 1. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's, let me pause and just, yes, sir. Yep.
Let me just say a few things. Naturally, the reason you're here too is because we wanted to reevaluate our board's constraints. We wanted to reevaluate our board goals. We won't always have opportunities to have this type of in-depth discussion on what they are, but more importantly, to also set benchmarks for Dr. Field and his administration, right, which really weren't clear, right? We're still working on previous goals and objectives. But the one thing that I will say that I know you've already addressed is expanding what those things were. We didn't have a finance and operation objective before, and as a board, we have responsibility to ensure that we're spending resources and using them efficiently. So this is exciting. I would also say too, in terms of the student experience, there is still a great deal of the staff and teacher experience, because obviously that plays right into retention. So we'll talk through that a little bit as well. But I think those are things that we're addressing every day, and to have clear goals. But putting my question out there, part of the issue we had before, and obviously Ms. Kenoy and I talked about it last time, creating realistic goals, right? Absolutely. And setting them out, and even staff, I mean, we're candid. There was pushback on the reality of being able to reach certain goals. So the one thing that I would like to see incorporated would be those exceeds. We do tape reports. There's, having the ability to say what would happen if we could exceed our expectation, to set a target. And like I said, it's just something I think that we're thinking even bigger than just conservative metrics. We're thinking, what does our community want? Where do they want to be 5 years from now? And what should we looking to align strategically to get there?
Yeah, so several thoughts come to mind. And Kristen and Mary, you're aware of the board's, I have a copy of them somewhere. You all sent them to me, the board's previous metrics. Okay, so that's where we start. Mr. Macias, to your point, like on the long-term outcome column, those that have already been set are our starting place. Then we start probing, is that the right number? Now, I will say this. When we build the scorecard out, and Mr. Macias, this may get a little more specific to your comment and question. If we, in this first column that says long-term outcome, X to Y by Z, if Z becomes 2028, then we'll have a column that says 24, 25, 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28. So it's not like we've got to get whatever Z is in year 1. So we're mapping it out. And then the conversation that's coming as part of this process is, are we thinking about meets? Are we thinking about masters? I'm just going to use like the stuff, and I think I told you I'm trying to forget all that. Now I'm having to remember all of it. But, this, this should be, it could be, Mr. Macias, that we have a baseline set, and then we have this aspirational set. And I think I told y'all the first time before, when I was nearby, we were comparing to right around us, and I was saying, that's fine, but shouldn't we also compare to Rockwall, Tomball, Dallas, like other suburban schools that are like us, demographically and growth and all that? And what was interesting, the answer was no. I'm like, well, I know why it was no. It's because we went to the middle of the pack. See, we liked having the line right across the top. We're better than, okay, I popped the average of those other comparison districts on, and we were not number one. So I immediately moved us to number 2 just by adding one data set. But y'all live close enough to where I lived. That was the right thing to do, right? It's just like we are not challenging ourselves. So, Mr. Macias, I had target outcomes and then I had baseline outcomes both as part of this, if that makes sense. And I think that's at least a part of what you were getting at. Another quick caveat: as the tactical team starts thinking about key strategic actions, and trustees, I love this environment where y'all can hear this while I'm kind of talking directly to the tactical team. Some of those key strategic actions could be actions that we are already taking, but we need to execute them with higher fidelity. So it may be something on there you are used to seeing, but we're saying, I'm just going to pick PLC. So we've been doing PLC, but we need to ramp up the fidelity. So boom, PLC is going to plop on here as a essential action or a tactical action. And what we're really saying is we've got to just do it with higher degree of fidelity. Then to Mr. Macias's earlier point, there may be a key strategic action in there that is something new. And we may want to note that to the board, like this is something new, that we want to put in here. So that's more of an aspirational, we're trying to say, board, it's on there, but just know we're launching it, so this is a new action. And then this is going to sound silly, but sometimes I think it's prudent to put a tactical action on here that you're already doing and you're doing pretty well at, so that it's just part of the public discourse about, because everything we put on the scorecard is going to be part of what we talk about. And so a trustee may say, isn't that really standard operating procedure now? And another trustee may say, yes, but we do such a good job at it, let's leave it on the scorecard because we want that to be a part of what we talk. So does that make sense that there may be this?
Balance out the score.
And that's exactly right, ma'am, because some of the other ones we may be saying, we're having a bunch of challenges on this one, and then the next one is, we've got this one nailed, But there, well, it's recognizing the good work that's happening at the same time that you're challenging yourself. It's this blend, right?
So it doesn't look like everything is struggling.
Yeah.
Very well.
So
We need to know that.
that's exactly right. And especially as you get into the financial, the green part down at the bottom, there may be a lot of actions down there of good stuff we're already doing, but we aren't transparent. We don't get it. It's in the first report, it's on the website, but did anybody ever really know what that meant or, whatever? So we want an opportunity to spotlight. Okay. That was supposed to be a quick glance at the BSC. I think the workshop is over. I hope no, I'm just kidding. No, we got a lot to do. But does Mr. Macias and trustees, sometimes this is called a plan on a page, right? And I kind of like that. Now, it's as we start building it, it's going to be 2 or 3 pages or maybe 4, right? But right, we will make the font bigger. And by the way, last night in London, they put it on this paper. No, it was good though. But it's almost like we're just sitting down. It's like here it is. Here's the plan. It's like in front of everybody. And I was there to coach their first tactical team report to the board. Do you see what's, like, we had built it in the last 6 months, and this was the first, now we're going to start the reporting. And so they wanted me to give them some reminders. And right off the bat, they hired me to be there, and they told me to come back, so I guess it was okay. But I said, you talked 52 minutes about the homecoming parade and 12 minutes about the scorecard. So just by your actions, you said one thing is 4 times more important than the thing that you, and, you know, it's kind of like eyes are down. It's like, you're right, you know, you're right. But it's too much truth too fast, you know. But that's the whole point. We're trying to get out of, we have limited time and energy here. There's stuff to approve all the time. Can we focus on, you know, like these things first, and then we'll move into the other stuff? Does any of this give anyone heartburn or any questions about it?
See when we start using it, how it works.
And I will tell you I'll link this up to the superintendent's evaluation, because we were talking about that last night, and I think y'all did a wise thing. You used like an entry plan. I'll go ahead and I think that's wonderful. I think that's prudent and that's smart. Let's see if this makes sense to you. So in January of 2025, a year from now, it will, in all likelihood, be more of a description of the progress of the stuff that you're building out right here. January of 2026, some of these metrics are starting to come in. January 2027, it could be argued that it's almost all data point, data point, data point. Do you see, like, so at first it's described the process and progress on the progress. That description stuff starts getting smaller as these metrics get more and more robust. And then technically, you know, you should be looking at trend line, which is 3 data points. It's like, you know, you shouldn't make an evaluation unless you've got 3 data points. Yes, ma'am.
Like you said, did I,
The microphone, please, yeah, make sure you understand.
hello? Did I understand you to say, though, that we can also add more priorities?
Well, what I'm recommending, this bifurcation of the student piece, and then I think I may have sent a template that includes the board superintendent relations as a component to this. So you
Yes,
would basically use this. Well, it might be your 6th if we split the priority 1 into student academic and student experience. Then you would have that as a 6th. Now, that's not the district scorecard. That's just the superintendent evaluation.
Okay,
Yep.
I was just wondering.
And then, so let's talk about this for a little bit. So now, I mean, if we do this right, the board goals or the superintendent's goals or the executive summary for the district improvement plan, y'all get where I'm, or the superintendent evaluation. And now it's starting to feel like it's, because you know, when I first started, it's December and I was going to be evaluated. I was 32 years old. I was like, what? I don't know what to do. You know, and they're like, we just got to do a big fancy presentation and you got to act like you're getting it all done. I mean, see, that's what I was told, seriously, you know. I was like, well, that doesn't feel right, you know. So we started trying to build in metrics, and then like over time, it kind of became this stuff where, and truthfully, my last summative at my previous district, or my last district, was maybe 30 minutes long, but we had been doing the reports for 11 months. So it's just kind of a summary of all the 11 reports in the 11 months prior. And in fact, I started talking and Robert Westbrook went, you know, like, that's enough, out, you know, like, we got it. And I was like, you said a summary. He said, I meant 15 minutes, not 30 minutes. She was like, okay, fair enough. And that was all, it's positive. I'm gonna give you another example. Mr. Westbrook cracked me up, you know, with a taper report. Once we had started getting in the habit of giving these reports month to month to month, then we give a taper report that starts feeling like old data, completely in arrears. So he asked me, and I think it was the right idea, like, if community members come that haven't come for all the other reports, make a 15-minute PowerPoint for the taper report, but be prepared to do a 2-minute if it's only the board. Because we know, we have heard all of that. And so all we're going to do is get on our phones. And, at first I was like, wait a minute. And he was like, you know what, you're right. Because if no one showed up, then we just go to the 2-minute one. And because it's a compliance matter, right? Not a aspirational driving performance matter. Okay. I am going to do something a little different than I have on my list here. I want to keep some of this momentum going. If you can just start that one around, please, ma'am, and then start that one around. And then Mr. Mestius, I was told that food might show up here in a little bit, and I'll time a break with it and let everybody get some food, and everybody can then turn off your microphones. Yeah. And I won't eat while I'm talking. But the document that's coming around, and by the way, I don't know how many more meetings, we're going to schedule at the end of this, but these are going to be out on the table every single time. These are kind of the foundational documents. Now, the aligned arrows that are coming around will also be out on the table regularly, and we will constantly take a look at those. So, what if I may borrow I apologize, I sent them around the graphic. Thank you, ma'am. I'll hand it right back to you if you'll remind me. So there's a model for the aligned arrows. Yeah, here you go. There's a model for the aligned arrows. And then there's a chart that's coming around with it. And the chart corresponds to the stages. Okay, so does that make sense? So this is like the bottom line description, like the short, succinct description, and then the chart that you have goes into a little more information about both processes and outcomes, if that makes sense. So I want to do something. I want everyone here, tactical and strategic team leaders, to look at stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4, not just the graphic. But even look at the chart. We'll have an awkward 2 or 3 minutes of silence here, and think about where you perceive Judson ISD to be. And I mean helicopter up to the big picture, the district as a whole. And just jot down a number. And you can use decimals or fractions, because I know that question is coming.
Educated.
So you're looking at this and the corresponding, and you're thinking, I think Judson is a blank, a 1.2, a 0.8, a 1. Right, somewhere on that spectrum. Thank you, ma'am. That's a good clarifying question. Somewhere on the stage 1, 2, 3, 4 spectrum. You can remember it, yes. Well, you can remember it or jot it down. Just one number. All right, everybody have a notion? Now, I promised myself driving here I wasn't going to pick on Kristen, because I've just known her whole life, so I'm not going to pick on Kristen. I'm going to have someone else lead the way. There's no right or wrong with this. That's great.
Yes, sir.
And everybody's number's going to be the same as your number.
I doubt
You're the
it.
boss. Okay, all right.
I doubt it.
All right, okay, all right, good. I want this to be like, we're gonna probe here, and there's no right or wrong with it. We're just looking for some key words here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what are your thoughts?
When I look at especially the definitions, strategic goals and day-to-day work process and strategic goals, systematic approach versus reacting to problems, knowing where we came from, I know that we've implemented some systematic approaches to getting things done. I think that we're still in the process of aligning those implementations. We're definitely not to the point where they're integrated with different operations.
So is that two-ish,
It would be a 2.5.
2.5?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you said? Okay, well, for the same, see, I told you that's what was going to happen when the superintendent said. Okay. Is anyone, yes, sir?
I had a 2, and obviously not because I believe we're horrible, but we are still working to align. That's why we're doing these workshops as well. And I almost think as big as this district is, there are things that are working. I mean,
Correct.
and so we could definitely see alignment in our approaches and the strategy. Now, is everything to that level? No. So we can't claim 3 in its entirety, but I think 2 is a strong place to recognize where we are. So that's why I put it 2.
Thank you. Well, let me ask you this, Mr. Macias, because you gave a lot of thought to that. Look at those the verbiage, and you can look on this if you want to, and/or this, and this is for everyone. What is one of the key words or phrases that is bringing you back to the lower end of 2 and not the mid part of 2?
Because obviously, if we were aligned, the arrows mean multiple things that were aligned.
Right.
Then our strategic goals, which we're working on strategic goals now, for the most part.
So you're saying strategy and quantitative goals are not clear enough, so I can't get it to the upper end of 2. Okay, does that make sense? And you're saying that's why we're here, right?
That's in part, but again, not to say that we've been without strategy. I mean, I've been on this board long enough. Ms. Rodriguez and I have been in long-range planning.
Absolutely.
There's definitely some goals.
Absolutely.
And strategy and bonds that pass that are building, and so.
Well, so let me leverage that comment. So he just made a case to me that you're definitely not in stage 1 for the reasons he just said.
Yeah.
Fair enough? Okay, well, let's hear it. That's good. That's what let's hear, and just think about that, and that's the purpose of this, because we're calibrating. So yes, ma'am.
So my focus was on those word systems and processes.
Right.
And there are some areas where we do have them, and this is the first year everybody's doing stuff to fidelity, and we're starting to evaluate them. But there are areas that we don't have a system and process at all. And if I think about it, which ones they are in my head, I don't see them anywhere on this goal sheet.
Right. So
And things like and part of that is personnel turnover too. So
Right.
like, do we have all of our finance processes down? No. Do we have the people to do it? No. Do we have new HR people? So do we have all of our HR processes down? Probably not.
So-
So it feels like we're working to get the right people in the place to start working on that. But if they became goals, then I think that shifts the priority to going and helping fix those things and putting the resources, money and
Gotcha.
policies toward that.
And your military your background is military, is that right? Okay, so you're SOP, like there's just a lot of SOP. And truthfully, I think schools could learn a lot from hospitals and military that, we say we have a process. Now, I got to where, someone would say, well, our process is blah, 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 blah. I'm superintendent. And so I would just say, well, put it in my hand. Put the process in my hand, and Wayne Pruski, I think I told y'all, he would always come try to put his head in my hand. I'm like, Pruski? That's not, and so the point is, if it's somewhere in writing and you can show, now I want to, thank you, this is a good caution right off the bat. You run the risk of this kind of system to get so overboard on SOP that we forget like the mission, right? So I'm going to say that right off the bat. But I think you can always, my experience was we could always do better on what is our process. And go ahead.
I was only going to say that I don't know if any organization will ever get to the point where they have all the processes
Correct.
and procedures put in place. In addition, my opening caveat was I know where we're coming from.
Correct.
And even in the finance, it's on.
Just a little bit.
Okay. Even in the finance department, I know that we've set up processes and procedures. We've even done it in the presentations that we do to the board, where we've changed what we bring to the board on a monthly basis. I know that we've implemented some of these systematic structures in our academic department. I know that we've implemented some of these things when it comes to our process, our procurement and purchasing processes. So I'm not saying that we're there. We are definitely not where any of us would want us to be ultimately. But to give the impression that there hasn't been systematic improvement in any of the areas throughout the district would be disingenuous. I think that we've come a long way in terms of really trying to.
So one thought that comes to mind is, and see, as a superintendent, when I was saying put it in my hand, someone was saying we have it, and I was basically saying it's not readily available for me as the superintendent, or for the board, or for the community. Okay, so like that, so in the absence of it being readily available, and they would say it's on the website. And so we played this 5 clicks or less game. So like we put $20 down, and I bet it's more than 5 clicks in, because I'm done on a website more than 5 clicks in, right? Like I'm finished. Like that's just into the bowels of, I don't want to go any. So what I'm seeing a lot of districts do is leverage the scorecard to have a key strategic action that is clarity around systematic processes, and then it's hyperlinked right up front in the strategic plan. There's a hyperlink to key work processes that relate to priority 1, like registration.
Oh, that's really.
Like registration. So like when we have all of these, it's just obvious where they live. Like we know they live right here, 1 click in off of the strategic plan. That's just one way to get there. So you all are probably going to learn this about me. 2 seemingly contradictory things can be said simultaneously, and both can be true. Yes. And so when I heard 2 statements just then, I heard both are true. But yours is in the absence of me knowing like where to see it and put my hand on it. I'm just going to say it doesn't exist, right? I'm going to just kind of put my foot down and say it doesn't. And I get that, and I kind of did that as a superintendent. Like we got to get them transparent. We got to get them right up front where people can see them, especially in today's world. Yes, sir. Did you lean in just to rest your back, or okay, all
I
right.
didn't mean an even one. I was like 1.8 only because there was like a couple of little areas that we got to work on our process to get us to do it too.
Thank you
So
for.
I wasn't saying y'all were a 1. I love you.
Well, and so let's do this. Now, no one's going to volunteer that they were in a 1. So, but I think I didn't hear anybody saying we're in 1. So, fair? Well, yeah. Okay, all right. So you're in, like, up, you're, well, okay, but you're, okay, great. Like, you're not ready to say we're fully in 2. Fair enough.
So what I would say is, when we started this whole process, we started first with our student academic success goals.
Correct.
The plan was to continue and move on and add more
Correct.
to what we were going to do. And then things happened.
Correct.
And it all got dropped. So my thing is, we're further along than some of y'all think, because we have already gone through, 4 of us, building the goals. So it shouldn't be brand new to us. We can replicate the same kind of work we did then, now, and that's going to make things easier. So
Well,
I think
and
we're further
again-
along than that.
Well, and all right, 2 people can say seemingly different things, and they can both be true. There may be just, let's just get more transparent with it, so that it's more readily available. That's what I think I'm hearing. And there's two big pieces to this. And one is, by the way, once the scorecard is launched, then the cabinet and Mr. Macias and trustees, the cabinet and I have a conversation about, does the current org structure align to the execution of this strategy? Do you see what I'm saying? Like and it doesn't mean like people lose jobs. Just let's be clear. That's not. But it's funny. Like you get clarity around these execution, and then you start thinking, wait a minute. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what that looks like. So you will have probably one or a team that owns priority 1. So everybody's working on that, but you're going to have a P1 lead. Because this is part of what we're not good at in education. we're afraid to tell someone, you run that.
Over accountability.
You run it. And I'm the superintendent, I can't run all of that. So now there may be some pieces in where the board says, you're running 4.1. I mean, you're like, the bond, that's what the board in SCUC told me, that's you. You don't get to put a name on bond planning. Okay, fair enough, it's at Greg Gibson. But then we're distributing out this ownership and responsibility, and then you'll have a 1.1 lead that might be different than the P1 overall lead, right? So in a district your size, that may be like the director or, coordinator, or executive director of whatever. And then you'll have a key tactical action 1.1.1 lead, right? And so we start getting clarity about where does this live? Because we write these district improvement plans that are just small novels, and then we say, who's in charge of it? It's just like,
Oh, no, all of them.
well, not you. Yeah. But y'all, right? And so the magic sauce to me in this is getting this clear accountability back to one person. So, Mary, you're doing a report, and it's priority 1 report in the future, and you're kicking it off, reminding the board of the big picture, and then boom, here comes somebody else that's, tonight, we're on 1.2, as y'all know, I'm the point lead on 1.2, and then boom, they turn it over to another tier down, and we decided to invite a campus principal here today that's doing really well with strategy 1.2, whatever, do you see? And then it comes back to Mary, and Mary closes out the presentation, or Chris, right, or you. We just showed this cascading of that execution, and then we brought it right back up. And then that way, you all trustees, y'all get to see, where it's cascading. All right, is that fair enough? That's really, really.
I love that.
Okay, it's really, really important.
One of the things I'd like for you to concentrate on as you give these examples, though, is Mr. Macias brought it up, and I know Ms. Stanford's made a statement in the past concerning the aspirational goal. And it's always been my mindset that, there's certain realistic attainments that you're grabbing at right now to get done that are more attainable. Aspirational being 100% of the students in Judson ISD will exceed expectations, you know what I mean?
That's more than aspiration.
Well, but for us in education, when you're nose to the grindstone, even if you were to say 90, it's almost more than aspirational.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so, a couple of things. One, so we're going to take a 4-year bite out of this apple. So the number that we're seeking, it may be more reasonable that's year 8. That's right, or it's year 9. But we're showing the 4-year road to, and that, I think I told you when the last time I was here, I wanted to leave a lot earlier than I left. But we finished that 1 4-year, and they said, wait a minute.
Run it back.
Because we said that this was an 8-year journey. Okay, all right. And then we got to the end of the 8-year, and they're like, oh, help us just rewrite one more, and okay, write it. Now execute it. Like, okay, this keeps changing, people but what was good about that was the continuity of that effort over time. Like those targets were targets for 11 and a half years. Now, that's one thing. So we may only get a 4-year bite out of it, but there's another number coming on the next one. And then what I'm sensing here from this dialogue, and this is really wonderful to me, is this balance on the key strategic actions, and this is mainly to tactical team members because that's your lane, and Mr. Macias and trustees, I'm going to open this up to conversation, to be about 66% current actions with higher fidelity, and then maybe 33% new actions. Like, what's the innovative? Is that fair enough? Like, show us the current actions, and let's have a dialogue about the higher fidelity. But I'm hearing the trustees say, but we want to see, like, what's that aspirational thing? As one of your key actions. What is that? Is that fair?
And let me give an example. I gave the example, so sorry, my experienced colleagues, I said this story before, but my new colleagues haven't heard this story. And in a real short way, when I was on the Alamo College board, they said, you know what, we want to create aspirational goals. And one trustee said, we want to offer tuition-free college to everyone. Everyone laughed them out of the room. Not possible, and they were talking about increasing enrollment. Well, naturally, they finally structured the strategy to be able to offer tuition-free college in
Right.
Bear County. That was a major objective.
To those that qualify.
Well, and the thing.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, yeah.
But let me just say, it's also marketing.
You're absolutely.
And it was all about, so the objectives of marketing and getting, and yeah, if you qualify, you still wouldn't come in, because they're still going to take last dollar in or something like that. I forget how they say it, but naturally, it opened the door. And the goal was to also bring students that were in poverty to the district, into college and workforce. It was aspirational, and it increased enrollment. If their end goal was to increase enrollment, they increased enrollment.
I would agree.
So if we look at aspirational goals, we're looking at grade level attainment, which our community wants our students to be smarter. We're also looking at retention. We could even say we want to be the #1 school district that retains talent in this community and create that aspirational. I'm not saying that we're going to say, you didn't do it, superintendent, you're out of here. But if we don't have something aspirational that's already tied to our goals, like, that's the exceeds part I talked about.
Right.
What more are we going to do to go further and build strategy to truly be #1 in that category?
So that's wonderful, and let me, just for the sake of this good, rich dialogue, flip the coin over. So this aspirational stretch piece, I'm fully in support of, with an asterisk. If we do not view this exercise as a narrowing of focus for what we're currently doing, we're just going to burn all these tactical people out. Do you see, like it's almost like this exercise has to, a big part of it has to be a strategic abandonment consideration. Like
Tactical procedures.
tactical abandonment, though. Are we doing things that are not lining up with where we think we're going with these objectives that the board's going to adopt?
Ms. Rodriguez.
Yes, ma'am.
I think like where I land on aspirational versus ambitious is that aspirational, yes, when it's not time bound, right? Like one day we want to land here, and here's the increment we can take on over the next time period that we're looking at. So if that's 2027, here's where we want to be that is ambitious and feasible. And the aspirational is there, right? Like, I don't think anybody here is going to say, well, you know, we only want like 50% of our kids to be successful in our district. And, you know, we'll pick and choose who that, no, that is not what we're saying at all when we make goals that fall short of like 100%. But it's saying this is what we can do in this time.
Thank you.
And I agree with that, too.
Yep.
The aspiration isn't to set a 4-year time period. I mean, aspirational is much further than what not the real goal, but what the attainable goal is.
Correct.
But if we're not thinking broader, we fail to not even try to be aspirational.
Correct.
And that's sort of what I don't want. I mean, we're here to build strategy, and we need longer-term strategic goals that may be 10 years out. Who knows?
Correct.
But we're not going to get there if we're not even putting a target out there.
That's correct. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
So what I would say is that the comparison of the Alamo College's initiative and what we had done here isn't a fair comparison, because what you're talking about is people who are not in the classroom directly affecting student achievement, making decisions and doing things. When you talk about these goals, this is the teachers, the curriculum specialists, and the people supervising them. And we're talking about how students can perform versus whether we can find money. So I think,
Sure.
I think that that's apples and oranges. So.
Well, I would
and
say it's
that's-
priority 1, priority 3.
Right.
Look at priority 3,
And-
what may be 4.
But we weren't there. And
I
he
know,
kept
but-
coming in and
I
saying,
know,
no, we
but
need
see,
more.
But when
And
I
that's-
hear this, what's the Alamo, is it the Alamo Promise?
Alamo Promise.
Yeah, when I hear that, see, my mind, see if this lines up, I went to community in my mind, not academic. I went to, we found some way for the foundation to do something. Well, that, to me, that's why we have that community bucket down there. Like, that's where that's going to
I
live.
agree. We didn't have that at the time we were doing these goals.
Correct.
We were doing strictly student outcome goals.
Absolutely.
And for somebody to say that we shouldn't be doing SMART goals, we should be doing goals
Right.
that weren't necessarily achievable, I could not agree with.
Right.
Because of the pressure that it puts on our staff.
Correct.
If I can't get 100%, why try? kind
And
of
you,
thing,
so
that's
do
not
you,
appropriate.
I'm going
So-
to, without trying to put words in your mouth, I'm thinking you're making a good case for all four perspectives.
Yes.
Because here lives those academic goals, and then we've got this staff perspective, and then we've got this community perspective.
Right, and so
then-
I want us to keep some of that separate and not.
Oh, we're
conflate.
keeping all of it separate.
Okay.
No, that is the other flag, like I'm going to constantly say, it can only be in one bucket or the other. Because once we squish it together, nobody's tracking it. I can't assign an owner to it, I can't check on it, it cannot be squishy. And there may be good fit in two places for some of the things we talk about, and then we have to have the conversation of best fit.
Correct.
Best fit to deploy it. Like, what's the best place for it to live, for us to execute it? Yes, ma'am. Am I supposed to call him Mr. Macias or you? I'm just.
We'll be okay right now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No, I like that 66-33 mix because I think there are so many new things we have started in the last year and new things that we have put in place. You know, it's kind of that crawl, walk, run type thing where we need to take all the things we're doing that we only have not even a year of data on, and let's get perfect at those.
Yep.
And let's make it standardized across the district. So you walk into a PLC at Olympia, it looks exactly the same as a PLC in Escondido, and
Well, different people,
everything-
different data,
Correct.
different kids, but
Correct.
same process.
But yes, it's just like a
Yeah, same
Starbucks
process.
here, a caramel macchiato here is supposed to taste exactly the same in Tokyo.
And that's why I
That's
go to
business model.
Starbucks. That's a
And
good-
so
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah.
we don't want to just try 800 new things.
Right.
Until we've made all the things we're already doing. We're doing it at a top tier level, and then we start to throw some new good idea fairies
Right.
in there, and start to be innovative and wildly ambitious in our techniques of how we're going to get then, always thinking about stage 2. But we're kind of in that stage 1, let's get everything to fidelity and let's start measuring the data of that if we can't just throw the baby out with the
Right.
bathwater and be like, oh, well, let's start all new things.
Okay, so I'm gonna extend what you're bringing up. Well said. So if you're thinking about, this blend of, what currently doing with a higher degree of fidelity, the tactical team members, and even though it's the cabinet, I would argue they're still like in the work a lot right now, not looking on the work. So tonight is an exercise in working on the work. Then they're getting texts and emails right now that's in the work that they've got to go clean up later tonight. So while we're working on the work. But a big part of this process for me, and now I'm kind of superintendent, is structure to ensure that this team can think strategically. And so, I got promoted because I was really good at the job that I did. But then I realized every time they're asking me to think about a bigger thing. So I can't just keep doing real good at the little narrow thing. And now so one of the best things that the board can do for the current cabinet over the course of the next 90 to 120 days is relax and don't ask them 1,000 tactical questions.
I'm sorry, what did you do?
Yeah, no, but for real, does this make sense? Because we're talking about, not just washing the car. We're talking about new struts, new shocks, we have to have a conversation about every piece. Okay, then use that time period as a little bit of an exercise of then seeing what the reporting starts looking like, and then seeing if it's meeting your needs as a board member to feel like I know that we're making progress. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's almost
This is based on the highlight of what the board's
the key strategic actions.
Right.
We have to
Objectives.
so the board is adopting the objectives. The tactical team are reporting systematically the key actions.
Correct.
That line up to the board adopted actions. And so the pause we're hitting right now is to let the board potentially get out of the way we've been doing it while we rebuild it. then ease your way back into seeing if the monthly reports are getting enough information out there, if that makes sense. Like, I'm a trustee right now, and do you remember I said I rolled into TRS hot? Okay, well, when we finally started working on strategy, I had to just almost shut down. They were like, "Are you okay? Are you sick? Is everything okay?" You know, but I had to get out of like everything that's going through my head, because it's going. And I just had to sit back and let them kind of build, and then I went back to asking questions that were more strategic in nature instead of tactical in nature. Does that make sense? But I had to give that team some time. And by the way, they did some reorging, and we made a strategic plan, and they reassigned some people to monitor things that we weren't monitoring before. And then I was fully engaged when I came back after it was built, but I was strategic and not tactical. Like, I was asking strategic questions. I wasn't asking, why is it painted red? I was asking, what's the process for determining paint color, right? Okay, is that fair enough? And does that make sense? Because and it's a tough time of the year to do this, but tell me a good time of the year to do this. Like, there is no good time of the year to do this.
I would say that we're coming up on May, April, and we're all marching into our accountability season.
Right.
So I can tell you that we've already implemented some systematic structures when it comes to academics. There's other things that we're coming up towards the end of the year. We're in the budget cycle now.
Right.
So it's kind of difficult to talk about long range when nose is to the grindstone right now. But there are some things that we could implement now that would walk us through the budget cycle, or prepare us for when we get to April and May.
If the board, okay, thank you. So if the board there's like 5 questions in this, and I apologize, but if the board's going to adopt the belief, mission, and vision, or whatever that winds up being, and columns 1 and columns 2, not this stuff, then when can we feasibly have that ready for board adoption in your mind?
As quickly as possible. We want it. So we're willing to take the time to make sure that happens.
Okay, so trustees, thank you, or trustees, are you comfortable if this stuff is not built out to perfection when you adopt this stuff, but you see enough of it that you see the general direction that it's heading? Yeah. Does that make sense? Like, I'm okay as a trustee to go ahead and adopt these, and I can see some direction on the actions.
Ms. Faulkner?
I'm comfortable with it, but as I said before, I come from education and from city government. I need timelines. I need, if that's going to be the case, we can come back and look at column 3, let's say July. 60 days,
Right.
90 days.
Just so you know, ma'am, I'm trying to build the timeline right now. That's what I'm
Okay.
probing for, because I just want to I want to know, I don't want to get them out of order
Right.
when we have everyone sitting here right now to, reach an agreement on the order.
Right.
So yes, ma'am. I don't mean that you would necessarily adopt this in the absence of any information. I'm not saying that. It may be that we only have 1.1 built out all the way across. And we show, and let's say 1.1, 2.1, 3.1, 4.1, and we're showing you those 4 built out robustly all the way across, and then we're still working on the other 8, if that makes sense. But
It does,
you're
but-
seeing how that looks going all the
Right.
way across.
Right.
Ms. Ryan? I'm sorry, Ms. Faulkner.
That's okay. I just don't want to put a pin in it and then go, later, for me, I need to see
Well, let me
what's coming
see
next.
if this helps, if we can extend here. We make an agreement that we're going to start reporting in September of 2024. Like now we're just designing back from that. Priority 1, first reports in September, October, November, December. Like, we run through the scorecard. So then, just to be clear, like, you're not getting away from this for the rest of your life. Like, we're going to do scorecard reports from now on. I mean, like, that's just in our DNA. This is baked in the cake. But let me ask this, is that a reasonable, just soft launch?
You know what?
The fall
I
is-
just said that a minute ago. I would defer a little bit to the cabinet to make sure that I'm speaking correctly. I know it's something I want to get to very quickly, so we're all marching in the right, we're marching in the same direction. We're doing what the board wants us to do. You know, we have our own goals, but I want to make sure that we're all moving in the same direction. So
And
I felt that way.
And I have a comment as well, but I'm going to let Ms. Ryan speak first.
Okay.
She was in line. Go ahead, Ms. Ryan.
I mean, I don't want another lost year is my concern, because last year was kind of a lost year in terms of no accountability ratings for the state. Everybody was new, so we're kind of like, all right, we did our best. You know, like, it wasn't super measurable last year. So now we're on a new cycle, you know, a January to January cycle, and we haven't briefed student outcomes in 3 months. So when are we going to get back to? Because we already have goals, and so some of this stuff we're already doing. So I don't want to wait till September to start seeing any data again. So,
No,
like, for number one, like, we already kind of know what we're doing for one. I can understand if we're developing new things on here that haven't been part of what we've done. But, like, how do we start seeing, are we going to go a whole year without seeing stuff again? I guess?
Sorry, thank you for clarifying. So the reason I said 1.1 a while ago, I'm assuming 1.1 is going to be your academic goals that you already have. Right. So we're going to build
And
that
we've been
out.
giving that.
Right, so that's exactly right. So we're going to build your 1.1 out, like, here's what that looks like in the scorecard format. So you're, like that, we could do that tomorrow.
Correct.
If that, I mean, like, and we can, like, because you already have it, so we're building out your 1.1 tomorrow.
So maybe as we're setting things, there may be different dates then for each of these
That's
things, right?
exactly-
That might be a little
yeah,
more
that's
reasonable.
what- that's the note
Like,
I'm
y'all
making.
already all over this, and we're used to seeing it, but this other thing we're gonna have to develop.
Correct.
And build out more, so I'm gonna
That
need
is
more
the
time.
note I'm making to
Okay.
myself right here.
Yeah.
Like, we're literally going to say, here's the timeline for 1.1, here's the timeline for 1.2, here's the timeline for
Okay.
1.
Yeah, I think that'll make me more comfortable that certain things will happen fast, and other things that may be newer to us may take a little bit longer to build out and then
Correct.
start seeing the things off of that. So,
Ms.
okay,
Eden?
thank you.
Gregory,
Yes, ma'am.
hi.
Man, that's what my mom called me, that's scary.
I'm probably old enough to be your mom, too.
Oh, it says it right there. I was like, how did you know? Now I realize I have a, yes,
But
ma'am.
Dr. Fields?
Yes, ma'am.
The current monitoring calendar.
Correct. We've been
Yes,
trying to.
that has
stay-
been in existence all
Yes, ma'am.
along.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
We can also piggyback off of that
This is just we'll just
to
we can make
fill
this
in
work.
some of this.
Absolutely.
No, I just don't want to give you the impression that we've just been flailing
Right.
and doing absolutely nothing.
No, we're recalibrating basically the reporting calendar to include staff, community, and finance as
Yes.
well. That's
Because
basically
they
what we're
worked
doing.
very hard on that,
Yes.
and it's been working.
Right, and this is great because we oftentimes don't start with this. And so it's just like, just
Thank
a
you.
big mind shift. I mean,
Now,
like-
one of the biggest changes, though, to this is that what we set as goals for, it was related on a different accountability system. They kind of flipped that on us in
Correct.
the middle, so we're trying to reset what that looks like going forward. But we have been reporting out where we are on the
Absolutely.
beginning of the year, middle of the year. And
One of the, let's see, so this is not that big a lift. I think it's just broadening out to the balance of student, staff, community, and finance is what
Correct.
we're doing. And what you all have to think about, I think, just to be real practical, is like, is at a regular board meeting enough? Or, do you want to consider a workshop that's dedicated to the scorecard report, for 90 minutes? There's no right or wrong. It's just once it's built, you just have to decide what's the right amount of time.
Well, Dr. Gibson, just to, I guess, discuss a little bit about what was mentioned earlier, there was a point I wanted to make. Ms. Ryan's point about accountability and evaluation, my objective was to have something to evaluate our superintendent in June. So if we get this implemented even the first 2 columns, that's still a measure that we can look at in June, and we would be doing it monthly, it looks like, as soon as they're ready to.
Correct.
To put it in. But we obviously need to do a very serious evaluation by January.
Correct.
So as long as our timeline meets that ability, that's part of the goal here, to do that.
Right.
And include the additional goals and objectives that the board and administration seem is important.
So one of the things I'm doing right now for superintendents, this is a great question. So, and you need to hear this and everybody needs to hear it. So a while ago I said January 2025 is more of a description of the status of the processes that we're literally, big superintendent right down the road. He's not big, but I mean, big district, right? Superintendent of big district right down the road. So we're mapping out the progress report of the steps that are related to that key strategic action. And then the board's getting like green, 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 green. Like here's a 10-step thing that's got to be happening to build that out. And so it's more of like a dashboard of the process. And so like they're getting 30 sheets of, and we put some red on it, like we dropped the ball on that one. And it's in his evaluation, but it just said, but I'm circling back around and I'm fixing that. So for this first year, I think it could be a lot of that and then whatever metrics we have ready. I would think it would be January of 2026 before a lot of that would go away and you would have a lot more metrics. So
Well,
that it's,
and then the other thing I wanted to make is, I know my colleagues, they'll do whatever is needed to go through this process. Once we went through the other one, right, all the meetings we had, that was a lot of meetings. So we will do what is necessary, and I'm thinking, obviously, we could have another special meeting for the first one, and basically then walk through, understand it, and then have it maybe inserted in a regular agenda and go forward, if everyone's comfortable with it when we have that discussion.
Thank you for saying it that way. And it was a couple of weekends ago, we launched a scorecard. And so it was a work session. And in that case, it was on a Saturday morning. And we went through 1.1 all the way across, strategic actions, progress measures, whatever. We paused and asked all the trustees, and we captured it in a running document. What are the strengths of what you heard? What are the opportunities for improvement of what you heard? And what is still unclear? You see, so it's like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 up on the screen. We ran through each one of them, and then we just captured the trustees' feedback. So it was a value add to the launch where the trustees were adding value to the reporting. And we said it could be something you're hearing about the data that's in there. You could comment, I still think that goal's too low, but it's more about the process. You know, like, does this feel about right? So we were calibrating between the tactical team and the board that, does this feel about right? You know, is this the right amount of information in it? I know that's a lot I'm throwing out all at once. And now food is sitting over there, so we're going to do a break in a second.
I was just about to say that, just the goal is still to get out of here before 8 o'clock, and or earlier if possible.
We will be out here
Depends.
earlier than that. We have many, y'all are stuck with me for a while, so I'll be back.
Well, and of course, we'll take a 2-minute break to just.
Let's do this before we take the break. What does anybody in here think that we are a 4? Anybody? Okay, does anybody think that we are a 3? Okay, so that's actually good. So we had like 1.8.
Two of them.
We had 1.8 to, like 2.5-ish. Okay, so see, that's actually, we didn't do that earlier. Like, you're tighter, if you think about it, on your assessment. Now, I want 3 key words or phrases, just popcorned out, but use your microphone and look at the verbiage. What is keeping us out of 3? Let's do it the other way. Like, what is keeping us out of 3? Yes, ma'am. Or 3 or 4, sorry.
Cycles of improvement
Okay.
are underway.
Okay.
We're not there.
Right? We can't go to 3 because, okay, now let me ask this. Do you see how this can address that? Okay.
Yes.
Give me another one.
Evaluating for improvement.
Okay. Do you see how this, holding up scorecard, can address that? Okay.
Repeatable steps.
Okay. Do you see how this can address that? Y'all know where I'm I'm just going to keep saying this, right? Okay.
And
Like
I
it's
would,
all-
I would say efficiency. You know, there is definitely everything we're doing, is it efficient?
Correct.
So we can measure that, too.
And I think efficiency can only be achieved with measurement.
Still an important one.
Qualitative goals, ma'am, do you see how this addresses that? So the point with the scorecard, and the reason it's considered a best practice worldwide on trying to align things is it's a concrete tool that is a performance management system, an execution system, not just goals up on the wall, but an execution system that by its very nature, if done with fidelity, starts all these arrows aligned. That's the point. And I think you can get from 1 to 2, I'm gonna make a bold statement here. I think you can get from 1 to 2 without a scorecard. I don't think you can get from 2 to 3 without a scorecard. And then you just have to keep doing this for 12 years to get from 3 to 4. I'll rest, sir. I'll rest my case.
I appreciate it. Very good point, and we'll take a quick 10-minute, and then we'll resume and get started.
Very good.
So 10-minute break.
Okay.
I may just have to deliver it, because I'm never going to find mine. Okay, I'm having silverware for Deborah.
house in California. He called me, he wanted to buy 4 houses. He flew in on Friday, we went around on Saturday.
He's on a 1031 real estate exchange. He's got to
Yes.
get the spit, he's got to get it tied up.
He was like,
Well,
I like Texas. I'm like, oh,
So we're back in session, and so we're having obviously a working dinner. So Dr. Gibson, let's keep us on schedule, let's keep on moving.
You got, sir, thank you. And there's really no reason why in the next 45 or 50 minutes we can't be through tonight. I need to get a few critical questions asked and then talk about the timeline. So earlier I probed this splitting priority 1 on your template between, and we're not wordsmithing tonight, if everybody's comfortable with that. It's just key concepts. So I'm assuming the goals that we've been talking about, may I just call them academic goals? Is that, so priority 1 is just academic success. So whatever that, we'll get more granular about that. So if we do split it to priority 2, and priority 2 is still part of the student component, let's talk about this for a second. Is it the student experience that we're talking about? Like it's their extracurricular, their co-curricular? I think I said all that earlier. Their mental health, well-being. Yes, ma'am.
Well, what about like the student outcomes that aren't academic? Because so many districts have gone to profile of graduate, and that's what they
Right.
put as their number 1. And it's good citizens who are
Right.
ready to go do something other than sleep on mom's couch, and that may not be passing the STAR test for some kids,
Right.
but it may mean getting your automotive technician license and heading off into
Right,
a job. So where do those student outcomes
Well, no,
come in?
in 2 places. One, like I'm assuming we'll probably have a CCMR target under priority 1, so the auto tech falls in that. But then what I'm asking the tactical team and strategic team is, do you want to give it a name, what she's talking about, like the student experience? So we're going to let extracurricular, co-curricular.
Because I'm seeing experience within student outcomes, not necessarily academic outcomes are a portion of that, but there's overall student outcomes. So where is raising good human beings who are?
That's the one, that's, well, no, I'm asking you if you want a priority for that stuff. That's the question I'm asking.
Isn't that a type of graduation?
Could be,
Not if you're a good person and a good citizen.
One of the things that we talked about, kind of like a side conversation earlier, was maybe there should be something that says stakeholder experience. And then you would have students, family, staff.
that is the blue part. So
gotcha.
hold that thought. No, hold
Gotcha.
that thought. That's the blue, like the blue part is the stakeholder experience. Now, so we may not need, we can write a strategic objective that is safety and well-being of students. You can park all this stuff under well-being, like if they're involved, if they're active, then that's part of their well-being and sense of belonging. So I'm not hearing us being completely sold on that being a separate priority.
Well, the only thing,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
go ahead, Dr. Knoll.
I like the idea of targeting student experience or student connection. I know that a lot of times when we used to speak about student academic success and we would evaluate, students who would historically not pass or underperform, we would ask questions to principals like, if these students are historically underperforming, have you asked yourself, how are they connected to the school?
Correct.
Because if they're not, then there's no way to reach them on that academic
Correct.
piece. And so I agree that we need to have an objective maybe under student success, because connection and experience, I think, aligns to that.
Correct.
I don't know that it needs to be a separate priority.
Standalone.
I think that it goes
So
with
it may be,
success.
it may be 1.3 is what you're saying. Or we may have 1.12, we may have a 1.4. Does that make sense? That's this student experience and connection, and that's
And
1.3.
what I wanted to say is that obviously, the goal here is to build measurable metrics.
Correct.
What are we going to evaluate? And in my experience, having character development, which is sort of what Ms. Ryan is talking about. Are we creating better students? Having character development strategies on all of our campuses and multiple layers, which is part of the social emotional wellness of students.
Correct.
A student focused in the classroom is going to do better. So having strategy, but also the other part that's more tangible is increasing our attendance, in
Correct.
which we have a whole bunch of truancy strategies to address the student experience, to make sure they're here.
Correct. And so I could see attendance rates living in actions related to this. I could see attendance rates in leading measures in any numbers. And then I could see attendance in the financial.
Thank you.
Right, attendance, to your point, Mr. Macias, it's going to pop in here in several places, measures, and, okay, thank you. I think for right now, I'm going to put it all in one bucket, even if we have a 1.4, and then we're going to probe it, though, as we get started.
I just wanted to
Yes, sir.
clarify, though. If we can get to, these are the areas of focus that the board is saying that they would like to address, then we go back and find those tactical measures and strategic
Correct.
ways to go about accomplishing.
That's correct. Right now, we're really just talking about the broad strokes of column 2.
But
That's all
we'll make out how we measure it.
That's
And then
correct.
we'll bring those back to the board
That
to see
is-
if those are adequate or you feel like that's an appropriate way to
Absolutely.
measure it later.
Yes,
Because what Ms. Ryan, based on what she was just saying, one of the things I remember, from being in school, because I was ironically sharing this with my granddaughter, one of my report cards from the 3rd grade, and discipline was on there. And she was like, well, why did they have that on there? I was like, because we got graded on it.
Right.
And you did all the way through elementary school. I mean, well, in Chicago, you went from elementary to high school because we went, our grades were different. But once you went to high school, that part fell off. But all through elementary school, we were graded on discipline. So
correct.
I can see that with what she was saying being like 1.4.
Yes, ma'am, and I could see a component potentially MTSS or levels of support or like that's going to live somewhere. Really, I think when we get to that point, the second priority or not is probably going to depend on if we want to give enough room up here for tiers of support. So are the tiers of support an action? Or are they an objective that we're trying to, that's what we've got to figure that out, right? Okay, I think, yes, ma'am.
I'm just a little confused, because where are we at on the agenda? Because are we building this out tonight?
I
Okay.
would like
You just
to,
lost me on the whole, are
No.
we going to look at mission and vision and beliefs?
that's what I'm wrapping up with.
Oh, okay.
I'm probing some keywords and phrases from the trustees so the tactical team can listen, so we can Zoom next week and start building this out.
Start building, okay.
Does that make sense? So this is
Okay.
we're trying to just get
I'm
some
like, am I supposed to be
key.
filling out blocks?
No.
I'm like-
It's just we're listening and taking notes because we're going to have you a scorecard built by June 1.
Okay.
Is where I'm headed, okay? Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so I'm not exactly sure where to put it, but like what Board Member Ryan was asking about would basically be us evaluating or having an evaluation of student character development over the course of time that they're in the district. However, what I'm curious to see is a spot for how are we serving, so when you talk about student experience, not just academically or not just extracurricular, but like school culture. Like you opened that door for me with belonging.
Correct.
And that, if a student feels like they belong, that they are valued, that they are welcome and
Correct.
included in everything, then they want to be at school, they want to be successful. So how could we include that piece? It's not so much of us, and I say this with the caveat of, we're not judging them, but what we would be doing is assessing their character versus ours as a district.
Are you
in our
talking
treatment
about a
of them.
measure specifically, or just where does it live on the scorecard?
Both. How do
Okay.
you, well, I mean, because there are ways to assess it.
Correct,
a simple survey.
Correct.
Would let us
That's
know how students
That's
feel like they're
correct.
being treated in various ways.
But the goal is to find out now, is it a priority for the board?
Exactly.
And then if they put
Thank
that
you.
down as one of the priorities, then
Thank you.
we will sit down as a cabinet and say, these are the tactical
you.
ways that we can address this.
That's
it.
that's well said. So now I'm going to circle back around to it and ask trustees, does it, and it's been framed up very well. I'm going to try to be better with the question I'm asking. Does this student experience / connection live in column 2 or live in column 3? Is it a strategic objective that the board is adopting, or is it a tactical action getting towards a board-adopted strategic objective? You follow, do you understand what I'm saying?
What's the measurable?
We'll figure all that out.
We're going
Well, we're going to figure all that out. Yes, ma'am. That's a great question, but we're going to
I think
figure.
there's an argument to be made that to pull some of it up to strategic, because we have to be out there in the competitive marketplace, and
Yeah.
if kids like going to Judson, they're going to stay going to Judson. If
Yeah.
they don't like going to one of our middle schools, then they're going to ask their parents to move them type thing. So I think there are elements of that play into a
What-
more strategic
so what-
level, but.
Yes.
And let me just echo that, the same struggle, that if it's not here, where will it live in terms of significance for
Right,
strategies?
great. So then it lives over in the actions or the objectives, or even on a cascaded scorecard. Let me tell you, when we first started building a scorecard in a previous district, they kept saying we want 1.4 to be extracurricular. And I was like, no, that's an action that lines up to, guess what? It was 1.4 and for 12 years, so there was a separate, in that case, a separate objective specifically for extracurricular and co-curricular. And this is kind of what this conversation is. And then the competitive marketplace just got brought up, which we hadn't really talked about that until now, and that's a really interesting concept. I'm going to tell you, there's a school in the Rio Grande Valley that has an IDEA campus built next to the admin building. It holds 1,200 kids, and it's full with a waiting list. Their priority 2 is increased competitiveness. That is their priority. Now, an IDEA right across the street is kind of in your face, right? So but that raised it up to the level of a priority, like that's a board adopted priority. We need to hear about competitiveness every single time we talk.
In what way? What kind of competitive?
Well, the more kids are engaged in, like if 50% of our kids are engaged in extracurricular and co-curricular, if we can shift that to 80 or 90, then the likelihood of losing that student to a competitor is dropped a lot if they're involved in an activity. There's data to support that. That's a really good question. Does that mean, like if they're in the band, they're less likely to leave than if they're not in the band, or if they're in one-act play, because we've got something that other place doesn't have. Like we're doing it. Now I'm leaning towards its own priority. Yes, ma'am, are you agreeing with that?
I'm agreeing with that because there's been enough discussion, and it seems to be a stair step to other things that are going to fill out along the way.
It gives more room for more granularity
Right.
if it's a priority. Does that make sense? There's more opportunity to describe more to the board, basically. I'm leaning towards it if ever.
And what
and I
would
think
we
it's,
call it? Involvement?
well, I
with
like
citizens?
that. I love the student experience and connection. That was said a while ago as a starting place. I think that's beautiful. Like I'm going to steal that.
That's one of the things too that keeps us extremely competitive with some of our students when it comes to these schools, charter schools, because they don't have these programs. And so that helps, because I know one of my neighbors, he has 4 kids, and 2 of them are in a charter school, and 2 of them are in Judson, and the 2 that are in Judson, they're like, Ms. Eden, we're not leaving Judson because one plays volleyball, one plays football.
That's it. That's it exactly.
Just a thought that I'm having. So in that priority of student success, and then making a separate priority for student experience and connection. I just wonder if student success could be renamed to be more specific,
Well,
or
no.
student academic success.
No, thank you. It needs
Because
to be.
then-
If we do this, that
Right.
P1 is
Okay.
academic success. Thank you.
Because then it makes it seem like
Does
we're
that-
only judging student success
No.
on,
Okay, this
that
is
make
almost like,
Yeah.
we're done. Because like so see, the words matter. And what we're calling priority 1, we're about to launch 8 to 12 years of work on it. And what we're going to call priority 2, student experience and connection, if that stands up to scrutiny for the next 60 days, we're launching 8 to 12 years of work. Priority 3, thank you for that clarification, because now we have to call it academic and then connection. And priority 3 is, and we're just going to call it staff for right now. So your new priority 3 is staff. This is what's 2 on the example, and it's in orange. Typically, staff is split into recruitment, retention, and capacity building. Those are the 3 big buckets. Do those feel about right? Like, and then we start defining strategy and, actions and, okay, so we're good.
Clarifying question.
Yes,
So
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
that recruitment, retention, and capacity building are 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3?
Correct,
Okay.
exactly. That's perfect. So like we're saying, those are our, and all I'm doing is sharing what is typically it, and then you all say, well, that's good, I heard you, but that's not the way we do it in Judson. But I'm hearing those kind of line up with your work. All right, so recruit, retain, and capacity building.
Correct.
Let me ask you a silly question, but it's important. Should this be staff? Should it be faculty and staff?
Oh, faculty and staff.
Do you, well,
We do.
but see, it's,
Judson in 6 years.
well, but we can redefine
You've never heard
this.
faculty and staff?
Faculty and staff?
sometimes we use
We can,
I call it staff and teachers.
interchangeably.
but it's typically faculty and staff.
Well, faculty usually indicates those that have to have state certifications
Right.
in order to have that position. If you just say faculty, then we're just writing a goal about teachers and we're excluding.
Yeah.
Well, and it could be employees or workforce, or, I mean,
I like employees.
okay, so is this employee?
Because that includes
Employees.
everybody.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
we can't function without every category
Correct.
of employee.
Okay, so I love it, we're going to broaden that out. Then in the key strategic actions, we get granular about teacher.
Right.
And right, we get more granular there. Okay, beautiful. So employees, then the priority 3 on your sheet, the blue, the new priority 4, what we're calling priority 4 is community. I heard stakeholder mentioned a while ago. Stakeholder is like the broadest term assigned, to anyone that has an interest in what's happening in Judson ISD. It's a stakeholder. We could broaden it out that far and call it stakeholder. I will tell you that typically community is parents and families, like that's one bucket, and then community involvement, which could mean businesses or municipalities. How many municipalities?
7.
All right, Schertzville, Universal City, Selma, St. Hedwig. No, I'm saying I
Yeah,
have.
that's when he was the
Who
superintendent.
was it? Wait, you said a city council member wanted my updated number, but, okay, so see, like I know all these, but like municipalities to you all is critical, right? Like you've got to have this relationship with all these. So is 4.1, well, I'm going to call it 3.1 on this sheet. So is 3.1 parents and families?
I believe it is community, that way we can incorporate.
No, sorry, go to the objectives. So then we're going to have one bucket for parents and families. Do you want your own objective for other governmental, like, is that important enough it needs to be its own objective? See, I kind of feel like with you all,
Like community partners, for everywhere.
right,
from
but I'm saying you're,
EDCs to faith-based.
right, but you're
to-
potentially even splitting as an objective. Sorry, we're in objective. So one objective is parents and families. Another objective could be the community, various community groups, like you just mentioned.
It could be the NEP, it could be the community faith-based organizations, the
Okay.
municipalities.
Well, see, but I'm splitting.
Business partners.
Business part,
and then
executive
That's what-
development councils.
That's what I'm splitting business partners maybe up from the municipalities and the things more like what
Okay.
she's saying. Parents and families, business partners, and then this broader stakeholder, other stakeholder. Is there consensus about that? Parents and families,
That's the first one.
that's the first one. Yes, ma'am.
I would, for 3.2, not just put business, but that would be a place to also include, because when you're looking for involvement, it's not just from businesses, it's, when you're doing stuff for the Jeff Foundation, it would be your religious organizations. So they should be separate from municipalities, because municipalities have a whole different realm they can offer. But I think we could tie business partners into other community resources.
So community partners,
Community partners such as churches and
So I'm gonna,
businesses.
I think I'm gonna, for our notes for right now, call it business/community partners. Then that drives us to split those apart in actions, because we've got two, okay.
And let me just add the concern I have with that. Naturally, we should be connecting, but again, looking at resources, we don't have unlimited resources, so time spent on those strategic partnerships, if there's not a tie-in on what they're doing to benefit the district, then are we just spinning our wheels in doing that olive branch? So will there be measurability in terms of if we're partnering with the right faith-based group or the right business partner, or if we need to go to Selma, if Selma's not doing anything for us, for example, right? What's the ROI? Because we can't send
Right.
staff everywhere. There's business to be done at the district.
So it's a great question. You come down to 4.1, you name it effective and efficient operations. And then your 4.1.1 is protocol for determining ROI for existing activities, like down in the financial.
Well, and some of that, a big part of this, the board members are part of the tactical team.
What do you mean?
Meaning, we go to those partnership luncheons, and we talk to those council people, and we have it's probably the only place where we actually have a tactical function. Everything else is.
Okay, this is really important. And I'm gonna underline only in that sentence. I think that's a really good thought, and I think it's an emerging thought that whatever this is, 3.3, like there may be a board action in there that is boards going with staff to various events, and that's what I did. Every time I went somewhere, we just made a deal that a board member was going with me.
Northeast Partnership.
Northeast Short Part, every one of those, y'all saw, if you saw me there, you saw me with Scott Harrod in tow, or Gary Inman in tow, or you're someone, Robert Westbrook with me. Okay,
Well,
so
and
that's a
we've done
really
some of that
good
on the
point.
community side, because like Laura now has, we now have a board committee, that's a town hall committee, that's bringing in community members on
Right.
certain topics, and that's owned and as a tactical action of the board, because it's a board committee.
So what we would say is 3.3, then potentially the key strategic action is the integration of the board and senior leader team into the, whatever this, and then that's, but y'all heard it, she said that's the only time we're in the tactical, right? And I think that's a good point she's making, like the board could be part of that community liaison. Yes, ma'am.
We go to the different things, but when it comes to soliciting, we leave that to our Jeff Foundation, because they're a nonprofit, and it's better for them. Lexi, she's the young lady that is in charge of that program, for her to solicit businesses for assistance.
Great.
Under the foundation. And in that way, we don't have all the board members out there,
Gotcha.
bugging the community, soliciting funds and stuff.
If everyone's comfortable with your system is asking me if I've left.
Not yet.
I love it. I mean, I know they're
Shout out to Lacey
saying,
Garner.
are you out of the building? Like, I think that's my hint. Somebody, Betty's over there punching a button. Make it say, yeah, your visitor badge is no longer any
In an
good.
hour.
That's an awesome system.
And Dr. Gibson, I just want to say, though, I like the tactical approach of engaging the entire board in doing community outreach and business partnerships. I think that's fine. But I'm trying to minimize having to bring administration to every function.
Correct.
Because again, I want the focus to be on the district. Not that that's not important.
Correct.
But again, what's the ROI? What's going to happen if Dr. Fields goes to Northeast Partnership for students on this campus, or on this district? If we can parallel or connect those lines.
Correct.
Then we'll know that that was a valuable visit, and if he does it once every quarter, that's better than if he does it once every month, that kind of thing.
Right.
Just so that we're not taking from staff time to go to events that will not have an immediate or even short-term benefit.
I may have said this when I was here before to this point, so we had key talking points, or points of pride, I think is what we call them. But it was priority one, points of pride, and then one thing that we're working on. Priority two, points of pride, and one thing we're working on. Priority three, points. And those were updated quarterly, and the trustees had those. And if I couldn't make it, Scott Harrod said, I'm going. Gary Inman said, I'm going. George Rick said, I'm going.
Board members, right?
All board members,
board
thank you, all board members. And they knew that if I wasn't there, I was going to say the same thing that they said. Because we had this was quarter one scorecard update. And by the way, it was senior leaders too. Someone else say, I can't make it, so the deputy superintendents, I got it. Someone give me the key, quarter one talking points. And so Kevin Huddes would say, like, there's no way y'all are all on the same page. And it's like, yeah, we're literally on the same, like we're literally reading the same thing. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, if we are including the board in the tactical team on strategic places, would it be fair then on the key strategic actions to name that the board is tasked with doing this?
I just made that note.
Okay.
That has to be crystal clear that board
Right, so that on
involvement-
other things, we're
That's
not
correct.
like sticking our nose in the
Nope,
business.
I just
kind of
made
thing.
that note,
Okay.
like we've got to be crystal clear. And it may be that there needs to be a separate priority, that the board owns that priority. That was the note I just made. So like the board is going to get involved in the build out of this across the right. But like this is the only place where we're going to say there's a board build out for tactics.
Ms. Faulkner?
I just want to point out, my thought process about municipalities wasn't so much as attending luncheons as it was fighting over a little piece of land.
Correct.
Where we need to put a stop sign or a turn lane.
Right, and I
We
think
need-
both of those.
Or a soccer field, the district has to be tasked. There's people in the district who are going to be communicating and be involved with the municipalities all the time.
Correct.
Because we reside in those municipalities, so there has to be some connection. So I wasn't even thinking of lunches or anything like that. I was thinking of the relationships that we had to have to do the business.
Right, to me, that helps me, and I think this was said a while ago, one strategic objective around municipality relationship or other governmental entity relationship, might be county also or whatever, but then one around business and community partners. Like that's two separate objectives. Those are the notes I have. Priority 4, which is going to be your 5, is typically in shortest language, financial stewardship, long-range planning, and then either transparency and communication, or you double down on financial stewardship and you say efficient operations. You set aside a whole objective that this is where we talk about ROI, this is where we talk about changing out light bulbs all over to get energy efficiency. Like this is where all that lives. So I said that fast, but like financial stewardship. So the big broad stroke financial stewardship, long range, typically facility master planning. What are new buildings? What are status of existing buildings? And then efficiency can be a separate one, or transparency can be a separate one. Really, there's two big ones there, and then I think you need stewardship and long-range planning. Like those, does everybody agree? Like, you gotta have,
Well, I'm right now on a few other words, like where's customer service fall in this? Where do communications
internal
and
customers.
transparency? I'm like, some of these other words that I've heard us use over and over and over for like 8 months at the board level, I'm trying to figure out where some of these things
It could be
lie,
under
because they're
retain-
very strategic. These are words that board
yeah.
members.
So your parents and families, to me, are the closest thing you have equal to customers. So a piece of that should live under 3.1. Then there's a component of students that's your customer, and then,
And staff.
well,
Climate, that was my other
well,
word.
staff,
So it fits in both orange and blue.
right, but we're going to get a little more granular about the word customer in this process. We have external customers and we have internal customers. External customers are our mission. Parents, families, that's our mission. Internal customers is this priority too: staff satisfaction and engagement, having the tools they need to do their job. And central services becomes, like, if I ever had a curriculum coordinator say, I'm just here for kids, I would go grab them and say, you don't teach kids.
Right.
You need to be here for adults. Oh, yeah. Because to me, it was like almost like they didn't know how to do their job. If they said, I'm just here for kids. They wouldn't say that if they were here to like make sure every teacher, has everything they need. Is that like, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but kind of not. Like that was a red flag to me. So we've got to get to the point that was made. We've got to get better about this. Who are our internal customers that we serve? Parents and families and students are our external customers. That's that increased competitiveness also. So it's going to live, to answer your question, in 3 or 4 places. That's right. In 3 or 4 places. Agreement on financial stewardship, like taking care of taxpayer money. Agreement on long-range facility master planning. Does anything feel like it needs to reside in what's priority 4 on here, but will be priority 5 for us?
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
What about technology? Where's that going?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes safety and technology come up here, and it can live as an objective. What I typically see is that the safety piece might live back up under this student experience. Technology, I think, becomes a key strategic action in a lot of these, or maybe even all
It
of
could
them.
go from academic to
It's how you support all this.
community satisfaction.
How
Right,
you support
finance,
all this
right.
stuff, that's right. So like that, the technology director last night was like, oh, I'm off the hook. And someone said, nope, you have a strategic action for every single one. You're like, you're every single one of them. She went, oh, yeah, good point. So that's, to me, that makes more sense. I think you run the risk of this green thing going bankrupt if you make technology a priority just to be a priority and not the tool you're using to deliver all the priorities.
And just to be clear, Dr. Gibson, from my understanding of this, one of the things that we discovered early on is that when you had turnover of administration and you had turnover of board members, that everything started over again with strategic planning. And my hope is that this document continues to live and is an instrument that can be used for brand-new boards and brand-new
Absolutely.
administration. So would that be your expectation
Oh,
of this?
absolutely. In fact, when I left, and I'll conclude with this, or we can wrap up, but when I left, I had announced earlier that I was leaving, and so I just ran to get food for the board those last, 4 months, as they were trying to find my replacement. I was the concierge. I kept saying, I'm your concierge here to serve. And so I was in my office working, and the board was down building the profile for the new superintendent, and the headhunter guy came and knocked on the door, and he's like, Dr. Gibson, the board is saying that the new superintendent doesn't have to build a new strategic plan, that you're in year 2 of a 4-year plan, or year 3 of a 4-year plan. And I was like, yes, that's correct. I didn't tell him to say that, but that's correct. And he said, we never run into that. And we're down there arguing with them that no, the new superintendent has to do it. And they're saying, then we'll go do this search on our own. And so, because the new one is not coming in and flipping all this over.
Right.
And that's
Because
why I'm asking.
No, this should have that, like, this is our anchor. This is our compass. The wind starts and all our ships, it's dark and it's foggy and our ships are, your ship and your ship and your, like there are all these arrows are going different directions. Okay, it's foggy. Column 2 is the compass. All the boats back, and now here we go.
And I would imagine a new soup wouldn't matter because when they come in, there's always a year where they're learning what they're doing. So following a roadmap is actually beneficial before it's just, okay.
Correct.
Thank
And then that's right, and they put their nuance in the actions. Like, wait, I've got an idea, like we did this, and that's a good idea. And so the objective's not changing, the how we're doing it, not the what. The what's staying the same, and the new superintendent says, I got some different how.
Talk about new superintendent. I'm just putting it out there.
Ms. Stanford had a question. Go ahead, Ms. Stanford.
Yeah. Where would teacher retention go?
Thank you.
It is under 2.2.
And Ms. Stanford, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Where would teacher retention go?
It's 2.2.
When we put
Well, we're going to say employee,
satisfaction.
well, we're going to label 2.2 for the starter version, employee retention. And then 2.1 is employee recruitment. And then 2.3 is employee capacity building. That's our starter version. Those words will likely evolve, but that's our starter version. I do have a little homework for everybody, and I want to ask you, Mr. President, if this, so one of the things, not tonight, but the next time I'm back here and we're giving an update, I would like, I tell you what, we're not going to do it tonight. I'm going to leave the opportunity with you. Cabinet members and trustees, they're in your packet, there's a team trust self-analysis. What we have found is that I'm not saying the only way, your exit ticket tonight is us all to stand and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. That is not what I'm saying, okay? But what we have observed is that sometimes you get into all this deep digging of work, the very sophisticated performance management system, and then something's wrong and you can't put your finger on it, and it's levels of team trust. It's some unaddressed matter that just needs to be facilitated in an appropriate way at the appropriate time. And by the way, the facilitation of this is eligible for executive session. I'm not saying tonight, but I'm just saying when and if we do it. And we've checked that with the 100 attorneys, and y'all can be 101 if you want to check with yours.
No, we don't need to.
But what I recommend is that the board take it, and the we is we the board or we the team of 8. And then the cabinet takes it, and it's we the cabinet. And you find out a way to do it anonymously, back to technology if you want to, or just let everybody take it and don't put a name on it and shove it in an envelope and email it to me. And I'll I'll put all the data in my system. So initially, we need to probe trust on the tactical team with the tactical team. I believe strongly it needs to be anonymous. Someone needs, if they have something, it's hard to bring, but if I can get it out, then we will debrief as a team and I'll facilitate as part of the process. Same for the board. Once we do that with the tactical team and the board separated, then I want to take again, and the we is
The team of 15.
the team of 15. And then, so now we've looked at the team of 8, the team of maybe 8, whatever, you plus, and then we've debriefed the team of 15. And again, I'm not saying that everything has to be over here in Happy Land on 5, but we need to not have anything in 1 or 2. Is that fair enough? Like we need, or at least we have identified that there's something going on that's got this 2 or 3 or 4 people of this group down in 2. And when I facilitate, and I don't mind saying this right here, I usually say now is the time for you to bring it up. If you don't bring it up right now, don't bring it up again. Because we're about to build a very sophisticated system. And, the last thing we want to do is, I'm not saying that any of you would do this, but across the state, we are seeing the scorecard weaponized. Does that make sense? When something's unresolved here, then they're weaponizing a data point here. And we want that to not be the case, if that makes sense. We want to get it on the table. Here's my point, Mr. President and trustees. If you want the truth with the data, and I think you do, no surprises, right? Like if something's not tracking right, we need to know in January, not in July.
Of course, correct.
Right, we're trying to make a correction, trustees, but it's not happening. It's April, still not happening. Fingers crossed on what's going to happen at third grade, whatever. My dad was board president. I think I told you that. He said, do not walk into a board meeting in August and surprise me as a board president. As soon as you know, let us know. Okay, I started that early on in my career. And sometimes I was maybe too fast. Because something worked itself out. But I still, I gave a heads up. But I could see this image of my dad, don't bring it to me in August. Okay, so we're building a system for that. But there has to be a high level of trust for the tactical team to feel like they can tell you this isn't working right. If that makes sense, we've got to have trust to do that. Fair enough? So I don't think we'd belabor this tonight, but if you all choose to do this, we'll just make that part of our next step.
And do you want it emailed and then you'll make it anonymous, or?
I think that if we just get with Betty, all of us can fill it out individually, put it in an envelope, give it to Betty, and then we just put them all in a thing and mail them to you.
We can, or you can do it right now and just hand them to me. It'll take 5 minutes. Just pop them out and it'll take 5 minutes. Maybe that's the best way.
That probably is.
I'll just take them with me. So cabinet members, all you're doing is putting a C up in the upper right-hand corner for cabinet. Board, you're putting a B up there for board. That's all I need. And you don't even have to keep the 2 pages together, right? Because it doesn't matter. I'm just going to crunch all the data.
I'm going to fill out 4.
Well, you've got to do 2 sets. That's right. No, let's hold off on that. I'm thinking that maybe I've overplanned. So just A1 through A7. It's just my mic off. Sorry. It's just the team trust A, B, C, D, 1 through 7. Page 3 and 4. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Thank you. So tonight, cabinet is just thinking cabinet, and board is just thinking board. And then we'll do that bigger group later. Thank you. Cabinet. I don't want to get them mixed up. So she's collecting cabinet and I'm collecting board.
Board, don't forget to put B on both pages. For both. Oh, that's right.
I'll wake up with my laptop laying in front of my face, but I'll get on. And I'll follow up with a timeline based on, for the rest of the work.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Gibson, for taking some time to give us some wisdom and some direction. Obviously, we look forward to our continued dialogue on this and your timeline. So colleagues, I'll be scheduling another meeting, and once I confer with Dr. Gibson on our next update. I see that falling in between budget and program review, but we'll make some time. And at that, being no further business, it is now 7:23, and we are adjourned.